Welcome to Stories Found. Each week we feature funny, weird, and mostly true stories from writers, artists, and storytellers around the world. I'm your host, Ava Love Hannah, a writer and humorist from Austin, Texas. Joining me is my writing partner, audio engineer, and all-around cool guy, Paul Hannah. You're listening to Stories Found. Our featured organization this week is Whiskey Theatre Factory, a theater collective based in Orlando, Florida, with the mission to produce meaningful theatrical productions that uplift, develop, and celebrate emerging and untapped voices. I adore the work being done by WTF, and I urge you to visit them at whiskeytheatrefactory.com to learn more. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Stories Found. This week we're talking to the phenomenal playwright and creative polymath, Bethany Dickens. Bethany is a freelance playwright, dramaturg, and theater artist, the literary manager for MadLab Theatre in Columbus, and a co-founder of Whiskey Theatre Factory and the Fragmented Theatre Festival. As both a writer and producer, she is obsessed with plays that deconstruct and take unusual perspectives on gender and sexuality, challenging audiences and serving untapped artistic voices by creating meaningful roles for women. Bethany is incredibly talented and incredibly busy. Many of you in the theater community have already had the pleasure of meeting or working with her in one of her many roles, but for those of you who haven't, well, get ready to meet one of the very best people I know. Hey Bethany, thanks for joining us today to chat about your play, What's in the Basement, Honey?
Of course, thank you for having me.
So this is your first time here on Stories Found, but it's not my first experience with your work. I adore your plays, and this one is no exception. It's funny and a little bit creepy. It has a strong female lead. It really hits all the right notes for me in a 10-minute play. So first, tell us a little bit about this script. What are we going to hear today?
So this script is my efforts to process a lot of the expectations and pressures that I have felt as a wife, but I think especially that I have seen women in my life feel, especially from older generations, feel about being a wife wherein we are given so much of an emotional burden and a logistical burden and a time burden of caring for the home. My grandma always used to say it was important for her home to be, quote, company ready. So yeah, which is a lot. And so this was just me being like very interested in questions about women's work and how that's been perceived throughout time. It's anachronistic, but it's set in the 50s because I just feel like that's the most, if I'm going to go for farce, that's the most stark setting for asking those sorts of questions. So things are sort of at their most extreme. But I definitely wanted to keep it feeling a bit contemporary, as we all know from research and statistics done during COVID, especially, that this is still a problem, that women are still doing the majority of the work, that there still are all of these expectations and sort of some toxic dynamics related to those.
Definitely. And that's what I noticed. I said, when I first read it, I was like, well, I really love this premise. We've got this idealized sort of 1950s classic suburban home, right? The most obvious stereotype for this kind of women's work, you know, and it appears perfect, but those homes are usually hiding these darker secrets. And I really, I love the idea how you represented that in the script. It's metaphorical and it's very literal. And where did you, and I know we've talked a little bit now about how you came up with this idea, but where did you get the idea to go, you know what, I'm just going to make it a literal monster?
That's just me like wanting to play with a Lovecraftian monster on stage for a while and just loving that visual of like a monster shuffling upstairs and kind of having a look around. I don't know, I just had this very striking image. So I was so pleased when at the same time I started to get very into particularly blogs, modern blogs, but that are very proscriptive in terms of what it means to have a vintage home and a vintage lifestyle, vintage homemaker stuff. So I was just so pleased that somehow in my brain, like the right neurons fired to where I figured out how to combine those two things.
Well, I think it's amazing. And I think it'll be an amazing visual. But even now, as we're doing it audio, we are finding it's going to be so funny hearing these little noises and feeling that tension build throughout the play. And I have to say, so one thing I've always admired about your work is that there are often these strong feminist themes, but they're never really heavy-handed. You have this wonderful ability to write realistic, flawed women, but who end up exhibiting this immense strength as the story develops. And I think this is one reason your work isn't just enjoyable, but really, for me, it's really relatable.
Mm.
So are there women writers or playwrights who have influenced you in your work in that direction?
Oh gosh. I'm actually going to start with someone who's not a playwright, but who I
Hmm.
talk about constantly. And I just think everyone should read her book, Maureen Murdoch's The Heroine's
Mm.
Journey. I think
Yes.
that, yeah, I think that was very inspirational to me in thinking about um, gender and how,
Hmm.
as women, at least when I was coming up, I felt a lot of pressure to that feminism meant succeeding in a masculine world instead of
Hmm.
deconstructing the masculine world, or perhaps even looking at new worlds and new spaces.
Hmm.
So I'm constantly going back to her work. I'm trying to think of female playwrights who I honestly, it's sad to say, like, I feel like, especially perhaps not so much at like the published contemporary works level,
Hmm.
but definitely when I'm, down in the dirt of just doing new works, I crave more of these plays coming through. Just as
Hmm.
I'm the literary manager for MadLab Theatre, and
Hmm.
I crave more of these plays. In terms of my writing circle, I would say women who are doing really interesting work, I would encourage everyone to look up on the New Play Exchange around questions of gender would first and foremost be Monica Cross,
Hmm.
Emily McLean.
Hmm.
Oh, and I did think of a very well-known playwright, Sarah Rule.
Oh, right.
I'm like,
Hmm.
I know it's like on the tip of my tongue. There's a play about a vibrator.
Right.
So yes, I would say that. But those ladies, on a personal level, really inspire me. They just have such a smart way of thinking about and looking at gender
They
from a very
do.
compassionate and authentic place, to your point, versus a heavy-handed prescriptive place. Um, yeah, and also local Florida playwright Tracy Jane.
Hmm.
Just a lot of women out there doing really phenomenal work.
There are. That's wonderful. So for me, this play is it's deeply funny. I think I've got a lot of surface humor, but I think there's some deeper notes. And I will say one thing that first caught my attention, and it's not in the script. It's not something audiences will see, but it was the character descriptions. So I opened it, I'm scanning the character list, and I see your typical, Doris, Jean, and their ages. And then the final character was a Lovecraftian monster, ancient and unknowable. And that was so it was so smart and funny, and I was hooked. I was really looking forward to reading the script at that point. And I think I love when scripts have these little Easter eggs hidden in there that are maybe only for the playwright themselves or possibly a literary manager like yourself. So, since you do read a lot of scripts for a living, how important are those little details to you when you find them?
Yeah, that is great. I encourage it. They are so important. They get me right into the tone of the piece, which
Mhm.
can be really helpful if I'm not getting to see the visual elements. If there are
Mhm.
stage directions that are creating an impression of tone or ideas or humor that can really pull me in and help me get on the playwright's wavelength, which the audience will get to experience because they'll actually be in the room. Um,
Right.
Actually, though, for the Lovecraftian one, that I have to give credit to the first place I submitted this play to. They were like, make sure in their instructions, make sure you have the names of the characters and the age ranges. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I will answer this one as best as I can. But yeah, absolutely. I would encourage playwrights to always throw in fun things like that to help me get to know your voice and the tone of the play.
It's wonderful. So you are a fairly prolific writer, and I've long been in awe of not only your work but your writing and development process. And I love to ask this question of other writers, especially ones who seem really, really organized, because I think I start organized and then I end up usually being sort of a seat of my pants writer against the deadline. So where do you tend to fall on that spectrum? Do you have a strict writing process and timeline for each project?
I used to have a more strict process, but now I've got a theater collective and I'm a literary manager. And honestly, I don't write every day the way that I used
Hmm.
to because I'm so focused on my main passion, which is promoting and celebrating and getting out their new works, especially
Hmm.
from untapped or historically excluded voices. So, given that I'm very lucky in that I have a lot of passions and I'm kind of an octopus and I'm all over the place. But when I do a project, I do just by virtue by, I guess I could say, the very nature of how much I'm doing, it's really important for me to, as you said, sort of plan everything out very carefully. I try and do one reading. I get a little like, me-centric once a month and have a reading of one of my plays. And I have all those planned out usually several months in advance of like, okay, what am I going to be working on? And I responded to every submission opportunity that was out there. If someone wanted a specific weird theme or something really random. Now I very much more write for myself, and which is I'm a lot more happy with. So that means I took 6 months off writing last year. I'm right now in the middle of a 2-month break. But when I get down to it, I definitely am. And I have to cut myself off at 3 drafts. Ava, you know how it is. You just want to keep writing forever, but after 3 drafts, it just needs to be done. And so that's also why I have such strong structures around my writing, so that I'm not tempted to work on something for years, because it can happen.
It'll never end. And I think one thing that I've really enjoyed about having NPX as a resource for us is once I say, okay, it's done and dusted, I upload it and that's it. No more editing. unless it goes through another developmental process and it really needs to change. But otherwise, yes.
Yes.
So that's really great to hear. So even though you're saying I'm all over the place, you do have a really nice structure. And one thing I found about working with you both as a lit manager and as a playwright is you are very reliable. You know the work is going to be there. So I appreciate that so much about you. And then I've got a final question for you. Now, if you had to live with a monster in your basement, which monster would it be?
That's such a fun question.
For me, it's Bigfoot. Always Bigfoot. So
Bigfoot does seem to have like a tender sort of just loping. I feel like Bigfoot would be a good hang.
Bigfoot for you too.
I would say, I don't know how well like Godzilla would fit into my house. And
that's a great choice.
Would destroy everything. So that's sad. But if I could find a big enough house, I love the new Godzilla movies. I love the old Godzilla movies. Me and my husband are total nerds and just love it. Especially everything, everything kaiju, like the bigger the better.
Wonderful.
So
see, amazing. That's an amazing choice. I love it.
I would actually pick a Lovecraftian monster, as those have such twisted, dark histories that I just feel like I would be uncomfortable. I want something that's just sort of is what it is.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with us today, Bethany. Sure. It's been a blast.
Oh, yeah. Right back at you. This is wonderful. Thank you.
We are now proud to present What's in the Basement, Honey by Bethany Dickens. It's being performed for you today by Liz Bernstein as Doris and Joe Lorenz as Glenn. What's in the basement, honey?
I'm home, darling.
Oh, fuck. Oh, dear. Yes. You're early, my love.
Well, that's the last thing a husband wants to hear. You gonna come get my coat, or should I...
just throw it on the sofa. I'll hang it up later. You've just caught me at a strange moment. Oh, my. That's the jacket you wanted. That was so expensive.
I couldn't help it. It was just so nifty. And don't worry about the money.
Oh, all right.
Hey, this looks really delicious. And so do you.
Aw. Sorry, they've been doing that all day. Let me get you your martini.
Do you want me to try and fix it?
No, it'll go back to normal in no time flat. Tell me about your day while I slip out of this dirty apron.
Oh, my day wasn't...
Did you have that meeting with Bill?
Well, the traffic going into the city was antsville. By the time I got in, I'd missed half of it.
But did you get the raise?
Sweetheart, baby, I told you. Never concern your little head with money. It's gonna be... What the heck was that?
Oh, nothing. Nothing. Just the plumbing or a pipe somewhere. Drink your martini, Jean.
All right. You know, if you want me to take a look at it...
Completely
It wasn't-
unnecessary. Oh, my poor man's had a long day at work providing for us. You leave it to me. I'll call Mr. Deschel if I have to.
Oh, all right. But if it gets worse, let me take a crack at it. I'm not saying we can't afford Mr. Deschel. I'm not saying that at all, but you got to save those pennies where you can. Anyway, after that meeting with Bill, I had about 2 hours of calls with clients, and...
Oh, no, I can't even imagine.
Oh, and it gets worse. You know that big pitch meeting today with Midas Industries?
Yeah. Didn't you have that pitch several weeks ago?
No, you're you're thinking about something else. Well, let me tell you, disaster.
Oh, no.
Ted's late. Bulbs busted on the projector. Bill brings a bunch of juniors in there, including that pimple-faced Andy Bleekner.
Oh, darling, how terrible.
And I haven't even gotten to the worst part yet. Just as I'm starting to think what else could go wrong, and next thing you know, what is that goddamn noise? Sorry, honey baby. I just want to eat this delicious meal in peace, and that keeps hanging around.
I'm sure it's gonna stop. It usually does.
It's been doing this a while? It's the basement, isn't it?
Well, I didn't want to bother you with everything you've got going on. Look, I'll just take care of it.
Well, that's no good. I don't want to sit here and have dinner all by myself. Is that my wrench?
No, it's actually bigger than yours.
My... What? What? Why do you have your own wrench?
Oh, don't worry. I paid for it with my pocket money.
That's not the point. I mean, we have plenty of money.
Of course.
It's the idea of you doing manual labor.
Actually, good housekeeping suggests a spot of exertion every day really brings color to the cheeks and improves circulation.
All right, that's it. I'll go take a look.
No, not the basement. Jean, please. I'm sure it's fine. I'll just pop in there and boop.
Is that... Oh, God, on the wrench, is that blood?
Oh, dear. Listen, Jean, No, not the basement. Jean, wait, I'll explain everything. Just please don't go down there.
Doris, this is my house, and I am gonna damn well see what is going on.
I'll tell you, I promise. Just don't. It'll eat you right up, Jean. I mean, I'll eat up your dinner, you silly Willy, if you don't sit down this instant. I'll make you another martini.
Doris, I don't want another goddamn martini. You better tell me what's going on. Did you murder someone and only half did it, and now they're in the basement?
Oh my God!
Well, I don't know what to think. Is that the blender?
Oh, for the love of... If you don't cut that out, I'm coming down there!
What the hell? Down where?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes you just have to take a strict tone with these newfangled household appliances.
Doris!
Oh, fine. There's some sort of ancient evil attached to this house. I found it on the first day we moved in. And so occasionally, these monsters manifest in the basement, and sometimes the lights flicker, but I have my wrench, so it's really nothing for you to worry about, dear.
I'm sorry.
Don't be, darling. At least we know why this place was such a steal.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't understand. We've lived here 4 months. This has been going on all that time?
Well, I mean...
And you didn't tell me?
I guess I thought you had enough on your plate. I mean, you don't want to hear about vacuuming or scouring the oven or the squirrel that died in the gutter.
This is nothing like that. This is...
Oh, wow, they are really flipping their lid. Oh, crapola. Honey, don't move.
What?
I said don't move! Go back to hell, you son of a bitch! What is happening? I almost got him in the basement! There we go. Just give the lights a second.
Holy shit!
Darling, will you pass the potatoes?
No, I will not pass the... We need to get out of here!
You're being dramatic. It's handled now. I'm sure he's gone back through the portal in the basement.
But what about when he comes back?
This is our house, our home. I'll defend it.
With a baseball bat and a wrench?
With my bare hands if I have to. It's my job, Jean, a wife's job, to create a haven for you. And I'll defend that haven by whatever means possible. I also have some chains and whips upstairs.
Doris?
Yes, darling.
We're broke.
What on earth do you mean?
I really messed up. The jacket was a steal, but it was still too damn expensive.
Jean, language. You're making me blush.
I'm just trying to say how it is. And the truth is, I don't have a job. I quit last month.
Quit? But, Jean, you always tell me about your day.
Because you always ask me, and then, I don't know, it feels sort of good to complain. You know, to remind myself of why I quit in the first place.
What the hell, Jean?
See, I knew you'd have this reaction.
Where do you go all day?
I don't know. Around. The dog track. Sometimes I just get a sandwich. And I don't want to get nagged about it when I get home. Or fight demons. Or eat dry casserole. Wow, you know, it does feel good to be honest about this stuff. Whew, all this pressure of being married to you and being the perfect husband. It's just too much.
Where are you going?
Oh, I'll eat something at the track. And tomorrow we can talk about selling this dump.
All yours.
just heard What's in the Basement, Honey? By Bethany Dickens. If you'd like to read more of Bethany's work, you can visit her website, bethanydickens.com. You can also find her on NPX, the New Play Exchange. We'll have a blog post with more information about Bethany, as well as a link to her website and some of her other work. You'll also find bios, headshots, and social media links for our amazing actors Liz Bernstein and Joe Lorenz. You can find all of that on our website, storiesfound.com. Our sponsor this week is Alicia Verdier Photography. A queer woman-owned business in Houston, Texas, Alicia's work is stunning. She uses natural light to capture life's moments. I've seen her work and it's gorgeous. If you're in the greater Houston area or near enough to visit, make sure to check out her website and schedule portraits, headshots, or event photography. Get more info on her site, aliciaverdierphotography.com. We'll have a direct link to her site on storiesfound.com. Thanks for listening to Stories Found. We've been your hosts, Ava Love Hannah and Paul Hannah. Get more info about this week's episode, subscribe to our newsletter, or submit your own story and be a featured storyteller in a future episode. You can do all that and more on our website, storiesfound.com. Stories Found was recorded at ELA Studios deep in the heart of Austin, Texas.